And welcome. My name is Susanna Zammataro. I'm the Director General at the International Road Federation, IRF, in Geneva, Switzerland. And I'd like to give you all a warm, very warm welcome to this IRF conference on roads to recovery as sustainable mobility for a sustainable future. We have people logging in literally from all over the world, and we are very thankful to all of you for joining us today. I will be your master of ceremonies throughout the entire conference, and I'm also the moderator for the very first session. A couple of housekeeping rules before we kick off with our program this morning. To the speakers, make sure you're all muted when you are not speaking, of course, and video off so that we make sure that we don't overcharge the systems. All of you participants, so the audience is muted by default, and your cameras cannot be switched on. You can all use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to greet everyone or to make comments. But please, if you have questions, make sure they are posted, they're short and clear questions, and posted in the question and answers section that you find normally on the right-hand side of your bar at the bottom. It's going to be a lot easier if your questions are short and they're posted exactly there, because we won't be able to see questions posted in the chat. If you are using Twitter and tweeting about this conference, make sure you use the hashtag that you see at the bottom of the screen, IRF4Recovery, where 4 is a number. We have a very dense program, as I was saying, 21 speakers, and I would like Meline to move to the next slide. 21 speakers and moderators throughout three different sessions. And I'll quickly run you through the program that we have this morning. The very first session will be a high-level panel, Roads to Recovery. Next slide, please. The second one will be zooming in one of the key priorities for IRF, but also for our sector, safer roads, or road safety. And the very last session will be about fostering innovation to accelerate the road sector transformation. Now, as you can see, probably you already noticed in the program, there will be no break in between sessions. So I kindly ask the collaboration of all the speakers to ensure a smooth transition in between the different sessions by switching off your video and your microphone at the end of your session, so that we can allow the next round of speakers to come on board. As you can see from all the pictures that have been rolling throughout the slides, I'm very proud of the gender diversity we have been able to ensure for this event. And I personally have to say that it's probably the very first time in more than a decade that I'm attending a road sector conference where the number of female speakers and moderators is equal to the number of male participants. And while we celebrate this little achievement, let's make sure that becomes not an exception, but actually the norm going forward. Now, before kicking off, allow me to take a short moment to thank the IRF team. The thank part comes always at the end of an event when everybody is leaving and on a rush. But I want to pause here and take a moment to acknowledge all the work that the team has been doing to pull together this event. So my thanks goes to Meline, Mylis, Julia, Gonzalo, Chris, Jero, Rika, Eleni, and of course our President Bill, who has tremendous patience with me and support us also with plenty of these people in the office. So thank you so much. Thanks to our members as well, because it's thanks to their support that IRF is able to run its activities and to offer you this type of knowledge and expertise exchange. And last but not least, my thanks goes, of course, to all of you, the speakers, who have all very in key positions, top executives, and who have taken the time to be with us today, despite their very busy agenda in these difficult times. Difficult times where I have to say it's sometimes difficult to stay positive, but we must stay positive, and we must stay positive for the younger generations, because they're being caught in the middle of tsunami that they hardly have difficulties in understanding sometimes, and also for the eldest who are being affected tremendously by this pandemic. And while we take stock of the impacts, let's put ourselves at work to shape a better future and to prepare this recovery, because recovery will come, despite the fact that many of our countries are going through a second or a third wave of COVID. Now, without further delaying you from this fantastic lineup of speakers, let me move into the session number 1. And I'd like here to give the floor to our president, Mr. Bill Halkias, who will give his opening remarks today. Bill, you have the floor.
Thank you, Susanna. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, on behalf of the International Road Federation, a very warm welcome to all. I thank each and every one of you for joining us today in these very difficult and complicated times. Special thanks to all the panelists for accepting our invitation to be part of this conference. Many thanks again to Ms. Susanna Zammataro, IRF's Director General, and the IRF staff in Geneva for organizing this event. This conference is not only an attempt to outline the roads industry needs during the crisis and post-crisis, but even more, an attempt to highlight some of the opportunities that recovery offers in order to reset our sector. It is also a confirmation of our industry's strong commitment to support a sustainable recovery. The COVID-19 pandemic is having extensive ramifications to the entire planet, resulting in an extensive disruption of transportation. All modes of transport have been negatively impacted, and the road sector has not been spared from this tsunami. During lockdown, toll operators lost up to 90% of traffic and 80% of the revenue. And the International Labour Organization estimates that an overall 305 million jobs may be lost because of this pandemic. Governments have already started to release significant stimulus packages. Many of these packages are being directed into infrastructure known to provide significant short-term benefits, such as job creation, will further provide wide societal benefits in the long term. The return to normal, in quotation marks, may never come, as the post-COVID-19 normality, again in quotation marks, is likely to differ from anything experienced thus far. Recovery provides opportunities and could become a catalyst for positive change. The road sector can play an important role by ensuring the desired reset and by supporting the economic recovery process overall. Our collective task should be to create a truly safe, sustainable, and efficient multimodal transportation system. Roads are the backbone, a fundamental piece of this multimodal ecosystem. Hence, it is important that recovery includes road improvements. Here are some good reasons to do so. Number one, efficient and well-maintained roads are a necessity. Under lockdown, essential workers and the delivery of goods had to be ensured. As national borders closed and border controls were reintroduced, many facilities, such as fuel stations, truck stops, and overnight accommodation were closed, making it a challenge for truck drivers to plan their journeys. More locally, in many countries, demand has surged for home deliveries. Indications are that this demand is unlikely to recede once lockdowns are lifted, and we need to account for this change as industry, as society. Number two, road safety. Preliminary analysis shows that the lockdown measures have led to a reduction in road accidents, which is easily comprehensible given the significant reduction in road traffic. However, and I saw already a question on the Q&A slide, the severity of those accidents was increased due to higher speeds and continued infrastructure flaws. The sector has proven that it has the tools to design and build safer roads, but this must be more widely implemented. All new roads shall be designed at a minimum of 3-star rating or higher, and the sector should hold itself accountable to this. Number 3, creating jobs. The road sector is a major employer worldwide, accounting for about 5.7% of employment worldwide. Some work sites were shut down preemptively, resulting in jobs being lost. Building, upgrading, and maintaining road network infrastructure is a key driver for saving and creating jobs, generating income, and stimulating economic activity immediately. Number 4, fostering innovation. Innovation is no longer optional, but a must, and it has to address different challenges. We need to find new business models. We need to ensure durability of infrastructure, especially given the extreme weather events we are facing. We need to reduce the consumption of natural resources. We need to cater for new mobility needs. So, 1, invest in strengthening the overall resilience of the network. 2, ensure adequate infrastructure for active modes of transport. And 3, encourage, undertake, and update of circular economy, thinking to speed up the green transition. Number 5, upskill the workforce. Last but not least, we should not forget about the human capital. We must invest in capacity building. We can adequately respond to challenges only if we have skilled personnel. Transition to a more efficient, safe, climate resilient, electrified, connected, and autonomous road transport sector requires investments to upskill the labor force. Finally, I would like, on behalf of the International Road Federation, to invite each and every one of you to engage with us to find together those answers and solutions for a better future. United we rise. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Bill, for your usual passion that you put in all these key messages. I'd like now to move quickly to our keynote speaker, Mrs. Lilyana Pavlova. She's Vice President of the European Investment Bank. I would kindly ask her to switch on her video if she wants, while we switch off our videos to make sure that we don't overcharge the system. The European Investment Bank is going through a profound transition or transformation itself, becoming the climate bank, and I'm sure Mrs. Pavlova is going to tell us a little bit more about that. Mrs. Pavlova, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Susanna. Thank you very much, dear President of PIARC. I would like really to start by thanking the IRF, the team, really for inviting me today to participate in this very, very important debate. I really, this is the right moment that then we are discussing this important and I should say crucial topic. If I may ask you to just to start my presentation and with the first slide, please. Thank you very much. As I said, it is really an important debate because we are having big challenges ahead. We are at the crossroad of unprecedented crisis, economic and health due to COVID, and of climate emergency. And transport is at the heart of both. It is one of the sectors most severely hit by the exceptional measures taken during this pandemic. But it is also one of the largest emitting sectors, responsible for about 23% of the total CO2 emissions from fossil fuels combustion. So the current crisis must be and may be and should be a catalyzer to meet the EU's goal for being the first carbon neutral continent by 2050. So by the end of the year, we already should start really having a clear plan on how we work and how we reach. If I may ask for the next slide, thank you very much. As you said, Susanna, we, the European Investment Bank, we are upholding the challenging objectives already set last year. So more than 1 trillion euro for climate and environmental action to be mobilized in the next decade. And EIB will gradually increase its share, the share of its financing for climate protection and environmental sustainability to 50% of all of our overall commitments by 2025, and we will maintain this level afterwards. And by the end of this year, we will make all our operations Paris aligned. So the EIB group is playing a significant role in the transformation of mobility and transport for a low carbon future in Europe and below. So if we may go to the next slide, please. The transport sector is experiencing a new technological revolution. To reap the gains from these technologies and to reach our climate changes, EU needs to tackle investment barriers and to accelerate the uptake and innovation of sustainable transport solutions. Timely investments will be crucial to drive down technology costs, increase efficiencies, support first movers, and create new markets. So we need to enable more than one technological pathway to create real green options for the whole sector, as the investment decisions we make today will really determine success or failure in the decades ahead. As one of the sectors, investments in innovation will be critical for a greener recovery in the road sector. Even though road transport accounting for almost 72% of the total transport emissions, there is a credible decarbonization pathway for passenger cars and light vehicles, which currently account for about 75% of emissions in the road sector. The decarbonization pathway for the road sector involves multimodality, efficiency improvements through digitalization and automation, increased electrification, as well as the increased use of alternative fuels like biofuels, low carbon, hydrogen. The European Investment Bank and Group has been supporting investments in these cutting-edge technologies for years, and now specifically we are also targeting to even increase those. I can give you some examples. In the past 10 years, the bank has invested more than 13 billion euro in R&D for greening and the automotive sector. This year alone, we hope to sign over 1 billion euro to support battery cells pilot projects all across EU member states. Also thanks to instruments like Innofin Energy Demonstration Program, a very, very valuable tool to support demonstration phase of innovative energy projects. In addition, the bank supported deployment of 5G networks, a crucial milestone for automated and connected road transport. In a similar way, as Innofin Energy Demonstration projects, in order to help front runners with the deployment of innovative transport, the bank partners with the EU Commission to create financial instruments such as the future mobility, which allows us to take more risk and to help to support and to finance innovative projects. The bank has already approved financing for almost 50,000 electric charging points all around Europe, supporting companies in many countries and providing program loans also in countries around Europe, like in Spain, Portugal, Italy, and many others to come. Next slide, please. The technology development, both in terms of new carbon neutral fuels and in terms of energy efficiency, is clearly the main enabler for the transition, while the cost and constraints associated to large-scale technology deployment are the key challenge. The bank will therefore be there to provide support in the years ahead, as it has been doing so far. The technical and operational barriers can be overcome by offering capacity building and technical support, which is something that the bank is already doing extensively. Like in 2019, 20% of our European Investment Advisory Hub assignments were really dedicated to transport. A substantial number of those assignments were really including support for alternative fuels and road safety, and we will continue. Already this year we were having the same, hopefully even higher size of those kind of support, and we will continue doing so. Please, next slide. The bank is not only addressing the effects of the climate urgency and the COVID risks, but also the road safety is a very high priority of us. As you said, Susanna, is a key priority for, I think, for all of us here today. Because as we know, every year 1.3 million people die in road accidents worldwide. So this is really a serious problem, a great concern for all of us. Therefore, we foresee significant measures and investments in road safety, and serious efforts of all of us are needed and we need to be united and together really to invest in all efforts to reduce road fatalities. The bank being the chair and myself being the chair of MDB's group on road safety, I'm happy to see that, and I'm glad to see that later today, the next session will be dedicated on this important subject, though. Therefore, I won't go into much details in order to save time. So, but indeed, I can confirm that it is really a topic of high and great priority and importance for all of us here in the bank as well. Next slide, please. Roads are also one of the most exposed infrastructures to the repercussions of climate change, which is why the EIB has been investing in strengthening resilience of the network, supporting investment for upgrading and maintaining the current assets. This is something we will be continue doing. Next slide, please. Finally, really in conclusion, I would like to say that really our collective challenge is to foster green investments to cope with future demand, while it's addressing societal needs. In that sense, road transport is pivotal sector to make a real impact in the future of transport. The European Investment Bank will continue to support investments needed to make this happen, as well as to support the sector to recover sustainably from the crisis and from the pandemic. You can count on us, on our support, both from the sides of investments, but as well on our technical support and our technical advisory to ensure much needed investments in the sector. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thanks to you, Vice President Pavlova. Hopefully we will have a bit of time to come back to some of the things you said in the question and answer part of the session. So I'll quickly move now to our next speaker, Jamie Leder, who's the Chief of Transport Sector Group at the Asian Development Bank. Your slides are on. Jamie, maybe you want to switch off on your video if you can. Otherwise, I'll just leave you the floor.
Thank you very much, Susanna, and thank you, IRF, for a very kind invitation Being from the Asian Development Bank, let me say or share a few words on the development side and the finance towards this sustainable recovery and the impacts of COVID in addition to the normal expansive transportation needs. Next slide, please. Just setting the scene a little bit, putting this from an Asian context, the demand for transport is increasing, and it's increasing very rapidly, much greater than the supply of the transport infrastructure, roads, rail, and other modes of transport. That growth is in passenger, it's in freight, it's for international travel, connecting across countries, it's in urban areas, and it's rural. So it's pervasive. This demand will continue to grow as economies grow, specifically in, or especially in developing Asia. Sustainable transport highlighted here, it's accessible, it's affordable, it's environmentally sound, and it's safe, as we have heard. So we understand that transport will and does play a significant role in enabling development. It lifts people out of poverty and it gives them opportunities to access education, job opportunities, and health things. But it also comes, as we've heard from the previous speakers, with the negative externalities such as congestion, air pollution, traffic accidents. One thing that COVID has shown us is what a new normal or a different normal could look like. We've all benefited in Asian cities from the reduced pollution, the reduced noise that is associated with the severe transport congestion. And I will touch a little bit on that COVID later on. Next slide, please. But looking at the financial side, and this stems back to the economic stimulus packages that we may see evolving out of the COVID to re-stimulate some of the economies across the region. A couple of years ago, ADB produced some estimates on the level of infrastructure. Each year, $1.7 trillion would be required for infrastructure investment, of which $600 billion per year is needed for transport. So huge numbers. This is related to new infrastructure in all areas, as I said, and different modes of transport. But what we are seeing in the region is a demand for increased operations and efficiency gains within the existing transport system. So we see a steady increase in a demand for new infrastructure, but an increasing demand for maintenance and operations and efficiency gains within the existing transport systems. Now, we're all aware that COVID has had some significant impacts. Yes, next slide, please. And earlier this year, we provided a guidance note and just looking at some of the key issues related to how transport has been impacted by COVID and what are some of the trends. Looking at the four trends we saw, public transport, as with most passenger-based transport, was severely hit and is still hit in many cases by COVID-19. We saw a significant decrease in demand for public transport within urban areas across Asia. We did see a shift to active modes of transport, which in many Asian cities was very low, but it has shown. So we're seeing more people on bicycles. We're seeing more people on walking, which is good, but we also must take account of the safety issues associated with that. We have seen a significant increase in demand for private transport, a significant growth in motorcycle use in many of the Asian cities. And we are seeing somewhat of a decrease in demand for travel across all of them, although it is increasing, getting back to normal relatively quickly. What are the implications of this? We need to allocate road space between the various users, especially in the urban areas. There is an accelerated desire for private forms of transport, and in urban areas, this is often seen as unsustainable. So how can we address that balance and reinvigorate the usage of good quality public transport systems? There is a change in the way people are working. More people are working from home. And in many of the Asian cities, we have seen a significant increase in e-commerce, which was well behind in many other areas. Final slide, please. Just some concluding thoughts. Transport will continue to play a pivotal role in economic growth and poverty reduction. Huge investments are still required, and this could be used as we come out of the COVID era to look at economic stimulus packages. But there is also, parallel to that, an increased need to look at the current operations and the efficiency gains. We're looking at the growth and the desire for increased personal mobility and how can we manage that between the various modes and how can we allocate the road space for the different demands that are being put on there. And I do, as we heard from the previous speakers, the externalities, the safety, the emissions, local or global, and the transportation costs, the congestion costs and the freight costs. thank you very much. Just a quick overview of some of the development issues, some of the finance issues from the Asia Pacific region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Fantastic presentation, spot on, and thank you for keeping it so short so that we have a bit of time to come back with a couple of questions, because I'm checking the question and answer function, and I do see a bit of a dichotomy and a couple of interesting questions about the role of technology going forward. But let's move forward, and after having heard from the development banks, EIB and the Asian Development Bank, let's move now to Malika Seddi. She's Secretary General of the European Association of Toll Motorway and Road Infrastructure Companies, to hear from the other side of the table what is happening. Malika, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Susanna. I'd like first to really thank IRF President Halkias and yourself for providing me the opportunity to speak today, and also a great thanks to the whole IRF team for preparing the events. So next slide, please. So I will just can echo what has been said previously by our previous speakers. But first, let me give you a few words about ASECAP, the association I belong to. ASECAP is the association representing all the toll road operators in Europe, 22 countries, 142 companies. So on a yearly basis, we collect 33.2 billion euros, and we operate 88,000 kilometers of network. Just briefly, some economical figures. We invest on a yearly basis 7 billion euros, and we generate 5 billion euros VAT. So altogether, 12 billions are allocated, I would say, for other social priorities for the governments that we provide money. We represent 50,000 people working for direct jobs. And as we mentioned before, the road safety is also first priority of the toll road operators. And the figures for the last 10 years, we decreased 64% fatality rates. Next slide, please. So just also to recall what is the missions of the toll motorway companies. We act as toll infrastructure operators under a contract, and we providing public utility services in order to finance, operate, of course, manage the traffic, and we collect toll in order to have sustainable financing. And we are responsible for performance in safety, as we said. For us, it's the top priority. And also mobility. We want to have smooth mobility that will help also to reduce congestion and to target CO2 emission, carbon-free by 2050. And of course, the zero fatalities, zero accidents, which is also the target that is at UN level, but also EU levels. Next slide, please. So the challenges of the future, it has been already recalled by several speakers before me. And we do face climate change challenges. We have a lack of public finance, and there's also an increase of social priorities. The cities, it has already been mentioned, are growing and growing, and the main priority is also to somehow cope with this urban mobility that we have, which is more congested, and where we have also time for commuting, which is increasing, air pollution and noise, as it has been mentioned. We have opportunity thanks to the technological rupture. Technological rupture for the future will be connected mobility, zero emission mobility with electrical, let's say, options, and also autonomous mobility. New usages, we see as road operators that could be also new options in order to reduce CO2. Fostered by digitalization, there are new needs emerging, asking for new services. And the society also is changing. They are asking for a new way of consuming mobility services like carpooling, car sharing, multimodality, electromobility, and that are very good in order to somehow target the objective of climate change. So our job as road operators is also to welcome these new usages and to adapt our infrastructure in order to cope and to answer this mobility and needs. So next slide, please. So besides capacity of road infrastructure, as I said previously, unfortunately, it is not unlimited. So therefore, we see of paramount importance to prepare the new infrastructure of tomorrow, and in order to have, let's say, more shared mobility, more connected mobility, and other encourage to have a transfer and also connection with other mode of transport like train, subway. So in order to create, let's say, mobility hub where we will be able to make, let's say, the transfer from one mode to another. And the motorway of the future should provide the possibility to introduce this new mobility plan as an alternative to, let's say, solo driving. So more, let's say, optimization of mass public transportation thanks to the motorway as well. So this mobility plan will rely on digitalization of infrastructure, innovations, of course, the deployment of IT, but also artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, connectivities. We saw also previously the need of having better connectivity. It will significantly decrease the traffic, while at the same time it will serve growing number of passengers and will target the ambitious goal of having climate-free effect by 2050. So the investments will be strongly needed to support this mobility plan, and it will contribute to decarbonization of road transportation. So we will need to have a private investment to boost this new mobility scheme. And the user pay principle with earmarked tolling is one of the efficient tools that will also serve this plan in order to proper invest in road infrastructure to make them optimized.
1 minute.
Thank you. And just next slide, please. I will just conclude with some quotation of toll industry leaders, the ASECAP president, the IRF president, the IBTTA president, the E3PO president, that to really stress that investment for mobility needs are really needed, and there are new options and possibilities that will allow us really to target and contribute to decarbonization of road transport. So the recovery plan is a good option to really boost this investment. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Malika, and sorry for pushing you to speed up, but we do have some interesting questions coming in. We want to make sure we have a bit of time. So after the tollway operators, now let's give the floor to another important stakeholder in all this, the road administrations, and I'd like to give the floor to Claude van Rooten, the president of the World Road Association, PIARC. Claude, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Susanna, for the invitation and for the floor. Even if we have to respect better speed management, please now fasten your seat belt. I will go quickly than 30 kilometers per hour. Sorry, not because we are only for roads, but we are also for streets, of course, but to illustrate our experience in this new pandemic. Next slide, please. You know what is PIARC, of course, everybody tell me yes. Important is to say 124 member governments, but we have also regions, groups, companies, and individuals. And we work with 1,200 experts from more than 80 countries in 20 and more technical committees and task forces. Next slide, please. I will not present the whole strategic plan. You can find that on our website. But of course, the horizontal issues mentioned also by James Leather, climate change, resilience, road safety, innovation are key issues. Next slide, please. Susanna asked us to illustrate how we tackled with that approach here. Well, we suddenly found that pandemic could disrupt road operations, that the impacts will last for more time. And that's why we already 20 March decided to establish a formal PIARC COVID-19 response team. Next slide, please. The key focus was short term. Well, the world is going through a crisis and every day counts, of course. This is the urgently share knowledge and practices is necessary. Knowledge and practice that is not yet confirmed as valid or effective, but we will evaluate later. Of course, what works in one country may not work necessarily in another, but it can inspire you. And a good idea now can save lives, improve business resilience, and could minimize disruptions of service. Next slide, please. We organized more than 20 webinars in English, French, and Spanish. These are the basic languages of our association, and also 25 external ones to give the opportunity to speak to everybody. Next slide, please. And that's why we worked, of course, with partner organizations and friends, and you'll see in the center one of them. Next slide, please. We have a website, a part of the website special dedicated for this topic, and you find the recordings of the webinars, also the presentations, but you can also find the technical reports related to pandemic management. Next slide, please. But the key issues we found: ensure as far as possible the health and safety of employees and road users, respond to impact in transportation, relationships and collaborations with everybody is necessary, maintain activity and continuity of service, manage impacts on the economy and supply chains, revive the economy after the crisis, and security, what includes cybersecurity, and of course, road safety too. Next slide, please. The response must, of course, not weaken all the other issues of the agenda, and that has been already mentioned. We just need to combine them, and that is very important for us. That's for me one of the key messages. I cannot read them all to respect the time, but I invite you to read the long presentation which will be on the website. Next slide, please. This is a list, for example, of the strategic issues that are emerging about the, you see, governments, but also private sectors. We heard some of them already this morning. And we have to be sure that the future pandemic must find the road and transport administrations more resilience in the future. We have to prepare them for the next steps. Next slide, please. Information sharing will be needed to learn how to bring sanitary concerns into transportation. That has always been the key issue in our life of 110 years, but we are going to go on with that. And that's very important to mention again. Next slide, please. Why do I remind to the next congresses? Well, the next congress usually is only World Winter Service, but is now also Road Resilience Congress. And that's why I take the opportunity to invite all the possible contributions to that Congress. So, yes, last slide. My key message: the road to recovery, well, is perhaps the recovery, the recovery of the road sector can go through the road to recovery. Let's build our sector and let's react with the whole sector to take that problem of a pandemic and transform it into an opportunity to meet the green challenges and also to meet the extremely important and priority topics as road safety. Thank you very much for your attention and see you later.
Thank you so much, Claude, for keeping strict on the time and for giving us, sharing with us the perspective of the road authorities. I have to say we found tremendous value in the series of webinars around the COVID impacts and responses that have been organized by PIARC. So I strongly invite all of you to visit their own website and access all this knowledge. I'll now pass the floor to Henri Blas. He's a Chief Content Officer for the G20 Global Infrastructure Hub. So we will be switching with him a little bit more into the financing part. Henri, the slides are on and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I cannot turn my video on, but I think that's okay. Okay, good, thank you. All right, so first slide, please. So thanks, first of all, for the invitation. I'm just going to spend a tiny bit of time on talking a little bit about what the global infrastructure here is. So we are the dedicated infrastructure entity of the G20, but sitting under the finance track. So essentially working closely with all the finance ministers of the G20 countries. We support the agenda of the G20 around sustainable, resilient, and inclusive infrastructure. And the mandate, even though we work very closely with G20 members, it's actually a global mandate. So that includes pretty much every country on the planet. And our key way of interacting and way of sort of creating change is through partnership, collaboration, and knowledge sharing. So next slide, please. I'm not going to spend any time on this slide. If you're interested in sort of looking at the different tools and knowledge products that we have developed over the years, please reach out and you'll be able to sort of navigate that. But we kind of cover pretty much the whole sort of a project lifecycle in what we do. And next slide, please. So let's go straight into the recovery. So obviously the pandemic and this economic impact have been at the center of the G20 government discussion, especially on the finance side. And so what we've done for G20 is essentially looking at the evidence around the role of infrastructure when it comes to recovery. To do this, we reviewed around sort of 3,000 estimates of study that had been done over 25 years and kind of concluded similarly to one of the multipliers that I think was mentioned by Pasquini from the EIB earlier, that indeed actually public investment, including infrastructure, was one who actually had the highest fiscal multiplier, and especially in the contractionary phase and when interest rates are close to zero. So what does that mean in simple terms is that infrastructure is likely to be a very important feature of recovery packages. At the moment, most governments are still looking at sort of softening the blow of the pandemic, but as we move into recovery, we see evidence that infrastructure is going to become more and more important. So what type of infrastructure? Next slide, please. Obviously, the COVID-19 has changed a few things. And we think three themes, I guess, and I'm just going to go further on just two of them. The first one is obviously to focus on local job recovery, and I think some of the other speakers already covered that. There's obviously a very strong focus on long-term transformative outcomes. So essentially infrastructure, yes, but not any kind of infrastructure. There's a strong push from people, from all the investors, etc., to move into sustainable, resilient, and inclusive infrastructure investment. There's also a lot of push towards technology, and it's something that, again, the other speakers sort of covered. And I'll get back to that a little bit in more detail later on. The last point, which I think is related to what Jamie was sort of talking about, is obviously the investment gap when it comes to infrastructure, as you can imagine, has sort of widened because of COVID. It's, obviously the governments have spent a lot of money on trying to support people, which was obviously the right decision. So as a result, there's a stronger focus towards finding out and basically sort of learning about innovating funding and financing, and a renewed focus on private investment. And I'll go back to the unfortunate reality of where we are on this. Next slide, please. So private investment infrastructure, given again, the limitation, the fiscal limitation of government, that's obviously a key focus. Now, if we look at it, and so we essentially looked at data all across the world and over the past sort of 20 years, and the evidence is actually kind of mixed. There is definitely more private investment in infrastructure itself. So obviously the private sector is very keen, and that includes road sector, obviously toll roads, etc. But what we're saying is actually when you look at what we call primary transactions, which is essentially new project or privatization, etc., actually that investment has gone down. So essentially there's not enough sort of project coming up, and what's happening in investors essentially exchanging assets between each other. So I think there's a lot of reasons for this, but obviously there's a bit of a missed opportunity here. A lot of appetite from the market, but actually very few transactions happening. And when we look at transport, the picture is roughly the same. As you can see, most of the sectors, I mean, all the sectors actually in transport are sort of going down. There's some regions where it's not true. Things are sort of going slightly up. But obviously that's a little bit concerning, and so the G20 countries and investors, etc., are essentially looking at new innovative ways to basically reverse that trend. Next slide, please. On the brighter side, and I think that's something that's been highlighted a few times in the previous presentation, we see tons of opportunities around technology and innovation in general. So I've talked about innovation in funding and financing, but there's tons of opportunities around the technology. So this year, focus of G20 under the Saudi presidency was actually around infotech. And what we found out, so looking at innovations around infrastructure around the world, working with the World Bank, was that actually in many cases were indeed around transport. There's really a lot of innovation happening, and I think they all sort of points towards better utilization of the road. So essentially making roads, more sustainable, they use. So essentially demand responsive transport, increasing outcomes for the same space or the same type of investment, transitioning to electrical vehicles. So again, we're seeing a lot of appetite there. And here, if I may, that's a little bit of sort of call for partnership and sort of ideas. So we've created this sort of stock take of new innovation, and we continuously looking for ideas, especially around the financing, obviously, of the solutions and the integration of deals and efficiency in general. So, for everyone sort of listening here, we're still looking for new case studies, and obviously those case studies are then made available to all the different countries around the world. So that's kind of like the first call for partnership. If we can move to the next slide, that's going to be my second one. So as we move towards 2021, which we all hope is going to be the year of recovery, there's the future Italian presidency of the G20 is really focusing on that, the design of stimulus, making sure that we get the most out of those sort of new stimulus investment, including in infrastructure. And I think our role as an organization, and I think overall there's a lot of things that can be learned from that, is how can previous experience or current experience by governments and MDBs help others make better informed decisions on how to include transformative infrastructure in those stimuluses. And so over the next year, and actually starting now, we're going to work on what we call an infrastructure stimulus tracker. The idea here is to really sort of across the G20 country, and possibly wider than that, make sure that everyone understands what other countries are doing and why they're doing it. So the first one's going to be that tracker, but we're also equally interested in again, innovation or good ideas or frameworks that essentially will allow other governments to better shape, to better fund and finance the infrastructure packages. So really at the macro level, but also what are the frameworks that they're currently using, including in the road sector, in terms of sort of making sure again that those stimuluses are actually achieving more for the same buck. So that's kind of the second call for partnership, and again very interested to sort of see whether organizations are currently sort of capturing everything that's going on in terms of road investments across the world, and also interested in sort of innovation in terms of like funding and financing and framing those investments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henri, for this interesting presentation that has opened up also plenty of other opportunities for us to discuss further down the conference. And I may ask Medina to move forward with the deck. Yes, get back to the gallery view. I'd like to quickly give the floor now to Gabriele Pasquini. And so we have a chance to hear also from a government here. Gabriele is a Director Senior PPP Advisor at the Presidency of the Council of Ministers in Italy. Gabriele, you have 2 minutes for us so that we can then open up, and you can switch on your video so we can see you.
Thank you, Susanna, and welcome to all. And I'm very proud to be here this morning, and I'm very glad to receive the invitation of IRF for this seminar. And I've heard a lot of presentation about the relevance of investments in infrastructures. I mentioned the presentation of Mrs. Pavlova that delivered a presentation about the large amount of funding coming from AIB for climate change and for the innovation in transport and electric charging points. And both the European Union and ASEAN Pacific region in the presentation of the representative of Asian Development Bank present the need of a lot of money until the end of 2030. But what I have to say is the relevance of the collaboration between public and private in order to improve the investment infrastructures. The pandemic might be the opportunity to a closer cooperation between private and public. PPP is a common technique to improve the investment infrastructures, and could be a relevant opportunity for investment in road sector and in highway and motorway sectors. Coming from my previous role of chair of the OECD PPP Seniors and Official Network, in that seminar in last October, the OECD published a recommendation about the use of PPP in infrastructures due to overrun the delays and the effect of the pandemic crisis. So PPP could be a very useful instrument to cover these gaps and to establish a more closer cooperation between private and public sectors. Thank you, Susanna.
Thank you very much, Gabriele. And I think we will have further down the conference, especially in the last session, the opportunity to look into those issues into more details. We have people from Australia as well, Roads Australia CEO, who will tell us a lot about the procurement reform and a couple of other things which are necessary, in fact, for us to be able to move forward. Time is extremely limited. It's now 10:29. But I would like actually, well, first of all, a couple of things in responding to some of the question and answers and comments have been put forward. Please rest reassured, we'll be sharing the recording of the conference together with all the presentations to all of you who have registered. You don't need to send us an email. You will be receiving a notification as soon as all the proceedings will be made available. Number two, I see a lot of questions in terms of road safety. We will be holding those questions for the next session, which is in fact dedicated to road safety. I would like now to just ask all the speakers to put their video on again. And I would like to put forward just one question, because in all your presentations, I've been hearing all of you actually, most of you, referring to technology. And so my question to you, and especially if I could start with the representatives from the bank, Jamie and Lilyana, with this great focus on electrification, on technology, on automation and automated mobility, isn't there any risk that we miss out on some of the core essentials? Some countries, we tend to forget that some countries still don't have basic efficient road infrastructure in place. aren't we looking at this whole issue with this, very European Western type of look, and especially to the banks? How do you strike the balance, and do you have any means in your way of operating to prioritize and differentiate? Yes, the focus should be on making sure we deliver a fully multimodal system where roads are just one part of that equation, that we cut down emissions. Jamie, you were referring a lot to the problems of pollution with growing traffic and developments. How do you differentiate? Do you have any means to make sure that while we focus on all that and we don't repeat the mistake of the past, at the same time, we don't leave behind countries? And I'm looking here also at Europe. There's a lot of countries that have joined Europe with the different enlargements that still lack fundamental road infrastructure. So how do you address this dichotomy? Jamie, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm very bullish on the decarbonization of transport. So that's just one technology, but we shouldn't look at a technology as being the only solution. It has to overlap with all the other components as well. So take that e-vehicle transition. It will happen, but what time frame, we're not too sure. Is it 10 years, 20, 30, 40 years? We don't know, but it will happen. But without other advances, without other balances, will we just see clean congestion? So we can't just look at one technology. We have to look at the overall impacts and the relationships between those. I believe there's also huge other technologies in data collection that we could utilize, which will allow us to look at better data, better informed decisions, better actions. And that, I think, is also a huge area of technology. Mobile apps telling you when your bus is arriving, those sorts of things are very rare in developing Asia. They're commonplace in Europe and North America. We should make them commonplace in a lot of our developing countries as well. So very quickly, technology will march ahead. One technology will not win out over all others. We look at it in a very balanced way, and we must ensure that that balance is always maintained and utilize the technologies in all their areas as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Lilyana, would you like to come on this, and then anyone else, and then we need to wrap up the session?
Yes, thank you very much. Just really briefly. Well, indeed, first, we on one side, yes, indeed, we are the EU Climate Bank, but in the heart of our bank is being also a cohesion policy. So indeed, also when we are financing any project, really social dimension of transport financing is really very, very important part of it. So we really always striving to address those challenges like aging population, migration, geographical disadvantages. So indeed, we will definitely need to continue financing in basic infrastructure together with innovative and efficient financing infrastructure, cutting-edge technologies, etc. But while at the same time, we need to have the balance and ensuring we have safe and secure, also green. So this is the really striving that the right balance is what is there for us, and this is in fact a very important dimension of our policies and of our really the way we are assessing our projects whenever all those dimensions are taken into consideration in that respect. So that's why you can count on us. If you allow me 30 seconds, because there were two interesting questions. First, on the different instruments, we do have a variety for our financing arm, as we call it, European Investment Fund, different tools to support startups for technological, really for the technological startups, and then different projects, because we really we need to, in Europe, to invest, and we do all support different not only electrical cells but European batteries alliances, and there are plenty of examples, but we don't have time now. I hope you will be able to find them on our webpage, or we can exchange after the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lilyana, as well. Malika, I know
you. 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
Okay, go ahead.
Just 2 seconds. The infrastructure is really important, as we said before, good infrastructure from road safety perspective. And we have different situations related to urban, let's say metropolitan area where the need is different. So I will just stress the need that it is important to have good infrastructure and infrastructure which are also connected to the needs that are around.
And maintained.
And very well maintained, yeah.
Claude.
Very short, promised. One, absolutely, in some parts of the world, we are more talking about accessibility, and in other parts of the world, we are talking about mobility. And we have to be careful that all the solutions are interesting, inspiring, but not applicable to every country. That's one topic. Second, never forget that technology, that kind of stuff, 10 years. Infrastructure, we need 10 years sometimes to prepare the projects. So let's work together to be sure that everything is well prepared, but in collaboration. I like the message work together. In Belgium, we say l'union fait la force. Thank you.
Merci, Claude. Thank you for this message. And indeed, it's not that we are here to absolutely advocate for building roads everywhere. Fortunately, those times are behind us. But I think the sector wants to make sure that everybody understands we take too often roads for granted. So we are all focusing now on active modes of transport. But when you walk, when you take public transport, when you take rail, when you bike, at the end of the day, you're always stepping your feet onto a road. And so we have to make sure that we have proper infrastructure for that. I see Bill waving. You want the floor, or because we need to wrap up this session?
Very quickly, just one point to link what Claude and Malika said. Before we move into technology and all those kind of things, have we considered simple things that we learned from COVID-19? For example, 4-day work week, flexible hours in the urban areas. Just a thought, nothing else.
Thank you so much, Bill. And there's so much more that we will be discussing on the next 2 sessions. So please stay with us while I thank all this fantastic lineup of speakers. Thank you for making the time and sharing with us your expertise. I kindly now ask you to switch off your microphone and video so that we can gently transition to the next session. Meline, if you can pull up one final slide with a piece of information that I want to share with you, in fact, is that as Bill was mentioning, this conference is just the beginning of a journey that we have undertaken. There will be an IRF paper on post-COVID to be launched further down this month. I want to thank all the IRF members who have worked with us to pull this together, and Arop, who's helping us now putting it into a nice format for that. 2 other interesting pieces of information. We have just been awarded as IRF 2 grants from the UK government under the High Volume Transport Programme. One that will allow us now to turn our knowledge center, the GTKP, into a hub of knowledge for responses and knowledge resources relating to the COVID-19 pandemic for transport. And the second one for another project that we're doing with the Global Alliance of Road Safety NGOs, assessing COVID-19 impacts and responses in 7 countries in Africa. So stay tuned. A lot more than what has been discussed today will be discussed further down throughout the rest of the year, but also in 2021 with a series of new webinars. This conference is really just to give you a first overview of the plenty of issues and the material that we have to discuss. Thanks.